Moving from place to place. Good morning, good morning, morning, good morning, morning.
Welcome back to the morning show on Tobago Updates Television. I am Adanna Combie, and we begin our conversations this morning in studio with our first guest, and we're speaking with Mr. Shawn Roberts. He's the Managing Director at the Recycling Waste and Logistics Limited and the coordinator of Tobago Recycling Resource Initiative. Good morning, Mr. Roberts, and welcome.
Good morning, good morning, good morning. Share the life, share the life.
That's right, that's right. One more share the life.
Right.
Right, so thank you so much for joining us this morning. And we're speaking about a very important topic. And, you know, mentioning that Trinidad and Tobago is the 6th highest plastic polluter in the Caribbean. And I remember just recently, I think it was over the weekend, I was on social media.
Yes.
And I saw a video where a sea turtle was having difficulty because it was, you know, trapped by some sort of refuge that was placed in the ocean. And so, you know, they had to fish it out of the ocean and try to get it loose, set it free to go again. And so now we're saying that Trinidad and Tobago are one of the contributors of this, and we're number 6 in the Caribbean. And this is something that is alarming, and it's something that we need to discuss, and something we need to talk about the importance of, you know, getting rid of our waste in a safe and responsible way. So let's have that conversation.
Sure. Good morning, everyone, the people of Tobago, Trinidad, the region, the rest of the world. Right. Thank you for having me this morning. Yes, we are, well, it is reported. I read the article yesterday, and even up to this morning, that we are the 6th highest polluters in the region. However, that doesn't take us from the reality that we are still in the top 5 polluters globally. So we are number 2 polluters. We were bordering number 1 before, and then we dropped to number 2. So to say that we are 6th in the Caribbean, that still is unacceptable, because to compete ourselves regionally as a polluter that is being mediocre, we have to do better than that. So right now, yesterday as we speak, the Ministry of Planning, the Basel Convention, the Caribbean, and the United Nations Environment Program have started the project series in capacity building in reducing the plastic pollutions. Last Friday, the first session was at the Trinidad Hilton, and the second leg, which is the Tobago leg, was held yesterday at Division of Health, Wellness and Social Protection headquarters, and we were able to have a very candid and fruitful discussions, you know, in really dealing with the issue, especially from Tobago and even nationally. So we was able to go through existing legislations, existing policies, the current infrastructure, the mechanisms in order to, you know, deal with data collection. Because you see, what is important with covering all these aspects, and especially the stakeholders that are to be involved in ensuring to reduce plastic pollution. So that is where even a national steering committee have been established. And actually, you know, I'm also part of that as well, because being a recycler, so I have to be. So that was our all-day session yesterday, and we was able to go through a lot of stuff and identify the gaps. So when I read through the article, and I realized that, okay, we talking about it. I see where recycling programs have been established years ago, since 2008 or something like that, and collectively, Plastic IK, all those projects, you're talking about the Green Fund. Basically, 400 million was spent, but yet we're number 6 in the Caribbean, and even in the top 5 in the world with plastic pollution. So if we're talking about behavioral change, it's not just about collecting the plastics. It's to make sure that if we study about the life cycle of a plastic product, you have to study about the source of the raw material, extracting it, to manufacture the packaging. Then we use it. So we consuming what is packaging plastic. the end of life, when it is finished, what happens with it? So are we going to keep treating it as waste, or are we going to give it a new life through recycling? Because it have different types of recycling processes that could give plastics a new life, where you can make a wide range of products, right? So look, last week you heard about the debate on the waste management policy or motion that was established. Now, if you're dealing with policy making, once you know the existing infrastructure is available, you can't really be telling businesses, take for example, instead of putting your cardboard on the roadside, carry to study park when you know you have a facility in Shaw Park. Now, the perception, the public already aware that they have a facility in Tobago. So they already start doing that. So that is why we have to make sure from the state side, the public sector side, and private sector side, we have to make sure we have the same message. When the messages are being conflicted, you have to be careful where you're creating perceptions that where it, people are not sure what to do.
I want to jump in here.
Sure.
A few things that stood out to me. In the conversation you had as recent as yesterday, you said that you realized that there were some gaps that can be filled. That's one. And also we're talking about having all this infrastructure in place. You also mentioned behavior, behavioral change. So we're talking about human behavior, changing a culture of, I don't know what is the term to put to it, but we have to change the culture. So how do we address what are the gaps? How do we address it? And how do we also change human behavior to realize and to understand that it is not working? I mean, you're saying that the report said that we are 6th for polluters in the Caribbean. You're saying that we are 5th, and also we are 2nd for general polluters in the world.
That's correct.
And this is alarming. This is very alarming. So what are we going to put in place? Not only these policies that we implement, but how are we going to change human behavior? How are we going to raise awareness that this is important to all of us?
Right. Very good question. Very good observations. So, first to begin, we have to start with legislation, right? You see, we were able to go through the various types of waste and recycling policies that was established in Trinidad and Tobago. And all the policies that been established, policies have a timeline. That is why, they will put waste and recycling policy of 2013 and that kind of thing. So basically, it have a 10-year lifespan. So every 10 years, when you have a policy, you have to review it. Now, the reason why you see these policies having difficulty to become effective is because you have to know what legislation that is connected to. So if it's not connected to a legislation, then it's very difficult when you implement policy to be able to talk about enforcement and all that stuff. So that is where you have to take it from there, from law. So, like for example, the Certificate of Environment rules was established under the Environmental Management Act of 1995. So when these CC rules have been established, then later on in 2022, the waste rules was established for businesses to start separating their waste from recycling. A lot of people not realizing that is law. So if you're a polluter, every year the EMA can be able to charge an annual fee for polluting. So basically, the more you recycle is the less you pay, or nothing at all. So I'm just preparing you for our oversight of how we have to start. You have to start from the legal framework, that's the legislative and policy framework. Then you have to go towards compliance, that is policy. That's where you're talking about monitoring and enforcement. We have a litter act, but at the end of the day, we have a litter act about people still littering.
And that's the challenge. That is the challenge. We implement these policies, and as you're saying, the enforcement aspect of it.
And you see what has happened. The reason why the waste management rules have in trouble to become effective is because when you have the absence of infrastructure. Now, in Trinidad, the main facility that deals with plastics in Trinidad is Sumcol. And here in Tobago is what our Recycling, Waste and Logistics, who deals with the plastic through the TRI program. So basically, I'll be realistic with you. is that we basically outdo our capacity because actually that was really a Chop Park was an interim location until we transitioned to Cove. Now we just have to more wait on the process with IDCOT to, complete that so that we could be able to transition and make sure we have a big facility to be able to deal with that problem. Because you see what also happens as well. We have to do community engagement. Community engagement means it's not just is going into the communities and you're going into the schools and make people aware of the dangers of when you indiscriminately dispose your plastics. So, and then too, you have to talk about incentives. Because the incentive program is what you call a deposit return system. You remember back in the days, Caribbean used to give you about 10 cents or something when you return your bottle. But you see the reason why that stopped, where they more kind of discounting it from your product when you carry your keys, is because for the bottler or even a recycler like us to shoulder that stuff on its own is very difficult. Now, when you see now it comes from legislation where you have a deposit refund system, where it included in the price of the product. Basically, when you go to whether it's a depot or machine or whatever, and you return your packaging, basically you get a voucher where you can be able to go to a grocery, get discount off your stuff, or you get a cashback from somewhere. So, what you call a redemption center. So things like those is what you have to look at. And also, the third point, what was discussed yesterday, is building trust with the public. Because people want to know, okay, if I take time to put aside my plastic bottle and stuff, what happens with it? And that is where the major thing. Because basically in Trinidad, ICARE focuses on collection. Processing, that may or not even is their focus. But with TRI, we made sure that we not just only do collection, we focus on processing as well to make sure you give it a new life, because we're trying to minimize what goes to Soddy Park. Because you have to be realistic. When we talk about landfills have about 5 more years, it almost exhausted. Let's be real. Once a landfill is more than 30 years, it is done. When you see, we heard in the debate where the Secretary for Health talk about where they had a work magic. If you had a work magic in a landfill, that means your landfill is exhausted. Because when you see you have to be reusing cells, that means your landfill is done. So that is why when TRI was being established since 2018, that was being planned, is because the teacher at that time recognized that, hey, we basically on the last cell. So we need to start keeping it away from there. And we need to start having programs. That's why the litter eradication program, people don't realize that a lot of the green bags, a lot of the recyclables come to Chop Park. Because if it is that we don't start tackling it holistically, then you will just keep seeing plastic bottles in the drains. It has hurt me when you see, bottles ending up in the beaches.
Oh, trust me.
And, it even with plastic grocery bags, that is one of the most dangerous plastics that is on the market. So we had actually started last year where we brought in shopping bags and started introducing to the public to start weaning out of using it. So, in fact, I forgot to bring one for you today. But I'll bring one the next time. So that is where we have to take it holistically. And it's all stakeholders have to collaborate to make it happen.
And I think there has to be a very, very intense public education drive. Because you can't really change behavior. Because you spoke about so many different things. And you also mentioned, I don't think people are aware. Almost at the end of everything you said, I don't think people are aware. So there must be some measure of public education, public awareness. And also, I really want to see enforcement of policies. I really want to see people be held accountable for their actions and their behaviors. And I really want to see the change, because it does affect all of us. And so I want to hear so much more from you guys. I want to see you.
Sure.
I want you to be visible, and I want you to ensure that the people, from the smallest to the greatest, must be aware of what the policies are, what the effects are of our bad behavior, and help us to change that behavior, change the culture of how we, discard of these things, and ensure that we create a space that is clean and safe for all inhabitants, because it is really alarming, the position where we are now.
Even in the article when I read it, where they focus their attention on one type of plastic, where they talk about the PET bottles, like the water bottles and the juice bottles, like what you have on the table right here. That is not the only grade of plastic, type of plastic. It have about 7 common grades, and it also have various grades outside the number 1 to 7. So when you're talking about plastic pollution, you have to deal with all the plastics that generate. So that is why we have to, really, as you said, we have to intensify our public education, and not just public education and awareness. People are aware, people know, because they travel. They comply when they go there. But here, well, it are no law, so I don't want. But so that is why, because it's voluntary, because they don't have the legislation to mandate that, so that is why we are making efforts to more build a public trust. Because right now what we do, we engage the civil society groups, the NGOs, and even the schools to come and visit the facility, tour the facility, get the practical experience. So when they do that, you will be amazed to know how they say, yes, boy, I was at the plant and I get to see what happens with the stuff. So the things like those is what we have to think outside the box in order to get people engaged. So that is something that we have to continue, and I'll keep you updated as we go through the series of the capacity building project, where we're reviewing just about every aspect in regards to data gathering, because you see, the next thing too, what we discuss is that we have to have the necessary tools to track what we generate. We even know we're going as far as how much plastics are being imported into the country. So, but we'll continue the conversation, trust me.
Very interesting conversation this morning, and the information, as I said, is alarming. And I would really love to see where this goes in the very near future. I don't want to wait 10 years for another policy or something to be implemented. I want to see immediate action, and I know you're having the conversations, and I hope something fruitful comes of it, and that we can start to see changes in our environment here in Tobago, at least to start. We've been speaking with Mr. Shawn Roberts, Managing Director at Recycling Waste and Logistics Limited, and the Coordinator for Tobago Recycling Initiative, and we do hope that we can see some change in our behaviors as it relates to our waste management. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for staying with us even until now, and we ask that you continue to stay with us, send your comments, and of course, before we go to our break, we invite you to share the live, share the live, share the live. We'll be right back.